If you want to learn to program, you have a million options. Maybe you're like me and you've got a bunch of books, or maybe you use Codecademy or Free Code Camp or something like that. Maybe you use video tutorials like the ones on Udemy and in many other places. Many people start learning programming with tools like this, but a lot of them end up quitting. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons they quit is that they get absolutely overwhelmed with everything they have learned and everything there is to learn. How do you keep track of it all? How do you commit what you've learned to memory? How do you stop yourself from forgetting? What many veteran programmers tell you is that you just have to dive in and start using what you've learned, and it will become second nature. There is certainly something to that. I've tried it, and it works, but in my humble opinion, it works badly. You'll inevitably forget most of what you learned from various tutorials. Now, the veterans, they say, well, that's just part of what it means to be a programmer. Yeah, you end up forgetting old skills that are not used as much, and, that's just how it goes. Well, I don't know. Those programmers are implying that even when you're a beginner and learning a lot of basic stuff, you shouldn't even try to remember what you've learned from tutorials. And that just seems wrong to me. You use it or you lose it, right? But how? Most methods you learn, especially if you're a beginner, you just don't naturally use because in your beginner exercises and your beginner projects, they don't come up. Besides, if you don't remember something well enough, then you can't use it. So there's a chicken and egg problem here. If you want to use a method, you have to remember it. If you want to remember it, you have to have used it. So I've been wrestling with this problem for the 2 years since I started learning full stack programming, and I've come up with what is, I think, a solid solution. And it is actually a command line app written in pure Ruby, and I call the app Revuu. And it's free, and you can clone it from GitHub. And the rest of this video basically is going to explain why it works, how it works, how to use it. I'm not going to show you everything that there is to know about Revuu, but I am going to give you a taste of basically how it solves my own programming learning problems for me. So this is what it looks like when I fire up the Revuu system. It lists the most recent tasks here. Let me back up and explain what a task is. I'll just actually go and look at the first one here. And a task is basically a set of things that you need to do in some language in order to drill a skill. So in this case, the title that I've given it is parts of strings. Use two similarly named JS functions, hint, they begin with sub, from the string hello world. Return hello, and then just the letters hello, then world. Each time print the strings twice for a total of 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you an old answer that I wrote for this. So Revuu actually allows you to save at least the most recent answer. So let's go here. It's a O for old answers. Okay, and so this is what I wrote before. Notice it actually saves it in its own file. It's automatically associated with the ID, and it allows you to run the answer, or you can run old answers. And so this is what it looks like. And if in case you were wondering, the methods are substring and subster. I could also use slice and I think some other things too. Anyway, but I was supposed to use the ones that start with sub. Anyway, so that's an example of a task. So let's go back out and look at the top level menu. So this is just the first 10. By pressing the right angle bracket or just the period, which is on the same key, you can go and look at the next set on the next page. So it's paginated as far as it needs to go. 2 dots or 2 right angle brackets takes you all the way to the end. So I actually have 148 tasks here. I am really into this actually, and it helps me a lot. It really does. I use it for lots of different languages, JavaScript, Ruby. I started learning C with my son, SQL, um, and recently I've added support for CSS and HTML and other systems that require the use of 2 or more files. All the programming languages are nicely color-coded, as you can see. Let me talk a little bit about where your data is stored. So it's going to be in the data folder, and your answers they're buried deep, basically. And there's also the ability to upload repos, and then you can make questions based on the repos. What exactly is the advantage of using Revuu? Well, it gives me a list of all the tasks that are due today. In the past several weeks, I have added tasks, and each time that I finish reviewing a task, I have to specify a date that it is going to be due next. So I think you can see already that that in itself is pretty useful because it basically gives you an idea of what you need to learn based on when you are ripe to forget it. So you review it before you forget it. The neat thing, I think, about Revuu is that it handles all of the difficulty. Let's look at another one. This one's from Ruby. It handles all the file management difficulties. So it actually stores the files deep in a way that is sustainable if you end up adding, thousands of files or whatever. So you don't have to know where you have put the file. You just simply type A for answer. It gives you a prompt. An answer exists. Do you want to archive it before opening? I'm going to say, sure, let's archive it. And that is going to put it over in old answers, and I'll be able to rerun the old answers if I want. But right now, I'm going to write an answer to the task. So
first, construct the array of numbers 1 through 5 very concisely using a range operator. Then use a form of Ruby's for in loop syntactic sugar to multiply these numbers by 3, printing the result after each. Then construct a duplicate array using another form of the range operator and another way to make an array out of a range. Demonstrate which range operator is inclusive and which is exclusive. Okay, be able to say in advance which operator does what.
I'm often looking at this. So the last time that I did this task was on November 7th, and today is November 25th. So it's been 2.5 weeks, and I think I can do this. So let me go ahead and do it, and then I'll show you what I did. So I quickly wrote the answer to this question. Here, let me save it. Notice I'm using Sublime Text. It isn't actually being written inside the Revuu program. Revuu actually launched Sublime Text and opened up the answer file for me automatically. And then so the idea is I wanted to learn, the difference between 2 dots and 3 dots, the inclusive and the exclusive range operator. And also, I just wanted a little practice with for in, which I don't do very much, but it's nice to know. And also the difference between using the asterisk and using 2a to convert a range to an array. And, there's all kinds of little things like this in the languages that we learn, aren't there? And if you don't actually use them for whatever reason, you will forget them. And basically, doing a simple little exercise like this will, keep it in mind. So you don't actually have to like drill down in the answers and find exactly here. Where is it? Oh, so this is number 16. This is one of the very first ones that I did. Zeros. Okay, here's number 16. This is the one. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You just press R. It actually locates the correct file and runs it and outputs it right here for you. So you don't have to leave this interface when you are doing your review. And yeah, so I think I got it right. So I'm going to go ahead and press S for save a review. Do I have all of this mastered, or am I merely confident? I'm going to say I'm gonna say I'm confident. I'm pretty darn close to mastering, but all right. So based on the interval between the last review and the review that I did today, and the fact that I gave it a score of 4, it suggests that the next review I should do should be 4 weeks from now, so just before Christmas. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept that by pressing enter, and it updates the information, and it has saved it automatically. It saved it, by the way, in tasks JSON. So it's just a big JSON file, and it's not that bad. All the longer bits of data are contained in answers, repos, and starters. And so I wanted to show you the tags in this answer. So Review automatically includes the Ruby tag, and you actually can't remove that if it is a Ruby task. And then I've just added a whole bunch of things, and it nicely wraps this for you. Okay, and yeah, I mean, if you don't like the score that you put, you can like change the score to something else. You can even change the language, configure the language. And then, so these are all of the languages that are in my system. Notice they're all nicely color coded with the colors that are associated with the languages. And yeah, so if you want, if you don't like the editor that you're using, let's see, the default is Sublime Text. Then, if I wanted to switch to Atom, say, then I can just press that. Actually, try opening up the first one in Atom. So, there we go. Answer. No, just look at the old answer. So now it's firing up Atom. And there we have it. So if you're like me, then you're going to be very concerned that all of this work that you put into the system isn't lost. So I've put some attention into the archive system. So as you can see, there's an archives folder here. And to access that, you just press A from the task list. And to look at all the existing archives, well, you can just go over here, or you can do this. And now I haven't actually saved an archive yet today. It's November 25th, and you see the last two are from 2 days ago and yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to create or export my data, create an archive, and I'm going to press enter for a generic archive name. And so it's created a new one. And now let's have a look. I'm going to refresh, and then I'm going to show the archives. And so here's the new archive. So the system never touches the contents of archives except within the archive system. So if you're really concerned, you can make another archive, and like like a backup archive or something like that. And then, so then you've got this. I've got sample data. That's for like if you want to just test out the system, then you just type in SA and it will load into the archive list. So the sample data is just, it's right here. So all it does is like copy this folder and put it in archives, and then you can use it, you can load it. I'm back here. So that works pretty well. So let me explain how to make a new task. There are actually two different kinds of tasks. Self-contained tasks that use just one file, you'd use n. A repo task, on the other hand, involves a couple of different files, and the repos are actually contained here. You yourself have to create or copy a repo into the repos directory in order for that to work. But I'll just take you through making a basic new task. So here, you have to choose a language because Revuu has to know what language you're working in, and we'll say maybe JavaScript. Then you have to input instructions, and so then you're going to type some instructions, right? Hello world in JavaScript, something like that, and then it's going to ask you for some starter code. In other words, if you wanted to supply like maybe this bit right here to the user so that they could then type in all the rest and answer to the task, then you could do that in the starter code. In this case, I'm going to say no. Input tags, yeah, sure, why not? And I'm going to just say, hello world is a good tag. And yeah, and then it takes you right to the new task view screen. And you can go to town actually just starting to write the task, like and then run it, and it shows you the output there, surrounded by JavaScript yellow in this case, and that is pretty much it. And then when you quit, you'll see the new task here. Well, I don't actually want to save that, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete it. And the number, you have to be very careful because you cannot undo this. Is number 1. Yep, it's definitely number 1. So I've deleted it. It reloads the task list, and that's it. So very briefly, I want to explain how you would start a new repo task. And this is a little bit more involved, but I'm going to have to use the command line. So if you're not comfortable with the command line and you're not comfortable with Git, you are not going to be able to make repo tasks. But if you want to be a good programmer, then you really do have to learn that stuff. So what better time than now? So what I've done is I've navigated to the repos folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new directory. And I'll call it HTML starter, say. Okay. And I am going to just create a couple of blank files just for demonstration purposes. I'll call it index.html and basic CSS. Oh, whoops. I meant to put that inside of HTML starter. So let's move index to HTML starter and move basic to HTML starter. There we go. And as you can see, it's there. So the next thing that I need to do is go into HTML starter and then run git init. Okay, so that converts HTML starter into a Git repo. But there's another thing that I need to do before I can use this. I actually have to make a commit. So I'm going to go ahead and write git add dot for all, and git commit message is going to be initial commit. And now it is actually ready. I actually have my bash prompt to set up to include the git branch here. Now, if you let's say that you wanted another version of this that had JavaScript. Well, let's do that. Let's go ahead and let's say you've created a basic JavaScript file. And as you can see, it's appeared here in HTML starter. I'm going to create a new branch, and the new branch is going to have the JavaScript file, and the old master branch will not have the JavaScript file. So I'll go git checkout b. I'm checking out a branch, HTML starter with JavaScript. Oops. Git checkout. Huh. Okay, and now I've switched to a new branch, but again, I've got to add those new files. Git commit, okay, add a JS file. All right, now we're actually done with the command line portion. So we've got a few files ready in that repo. So what you do next is you go over to new repotask, R, and Revuu looks at the contents of the repos folder and observes that there are these three. So the one that I just created was HTML starter. I'm going to go ahead and choose it, too. And hey, there are two branches. The most recently created one is shown first, and then there's the master branch. And let's say I want to use the first one, the one with the JavaScript. Maybe the only one that I really need to open is the HTML file or one of the others. But in this case, I think I want to add all of them. So I'm going to say 2, and then why don't we say 3, and then there is no 3 anymore, right? The files remaining are 1 and 2. So I'm going to say the CSS and then JavaScript. Okay, so now there's no files remaining. You've included all the files from the repo for editing. Press enter to confirm, or enter the number of a file to remove. So enter, confirm. All right, great. And now I'm going to choose the language, like the main language. So maybe we'll call it HTML. And now the instructions: make a basic blank HTML file. Make a hello world HTML file that is linked to a CSS and a JavaScript file. Make sure the CSS and JavaScript files do something. Okay. Tags, I'll do that later. I mean, there's so many different tags that might be involved. What I'll often do is skip the tags and then go and add them later after I've actually done the task, and then I'll just add the tags in there. I really need to make a full text search, and so input run commands. Now, right, so on the next screen, enter at least one command line command needed to see the code in action. So in this case, because it's a basic HTML thing, I'm just going to type the name of my preferred browser and, you know, just do that, and there's nothing else that I need to. But if I were doing a Rails app, I could actually use this to actually start the server, for example, or maybe do a migration, um, and who knows what. It's very much extensible to lots of different languages. Okay, so I have just finished creating the repo task, and as you can see, you can open up the different files very easily. Like if I want to do this, here's the HTML file. Well, I will do at least this much. Okay. Let's go ahead and all right, and then I'm gonna go make a link to the style sheet, and then the href is gonna be basic CSS, and then I'm gonna wanna do style source equals basic JS, and then of course I got to do that or it won't work. And then so there's that. I'm gonna go ahead, go to the CSS, and I'll just make h1 red. And let's see here in the JavaScript. Oh, I don't know. We'll just do window onload equals function alert. All right. Let's see if it works. So to see if it works, I'm going to run the answer. And when you run it, you are going to be running the commands to run. And there it is. There's one command to run. So let's go ahead and run it. And let's see, it's on my other screen, so I'm going to have to drag it over here. So here it is. Looks like it worked. But I need to. Oh, my JavaScript is not working. Oh, silly me, I put down style here instead of script. There we go. Now it'll work. Let's run it again. You did it. Yay. So, that basically concludes the little tutorial of how to add a repo task. Hope that wasn't too tedious. And the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. It really isn't that hard, actually, to create a blank repo. You can actually use and import full featured repos that you are working on for work or whatever, or big projects. You can import them, and the repo branches that you are using will be accessible to Revuu, and you can like switch to one. The only difficulty that you might have as of November 2018 is keeping your data in sync with the database. So I have not given any attention to that. So you will have to handle that yourself via the command line and just like pay attention. But you can probably figure that out if you're already working with databases. So there's only one other thing that I wanted to show you, and that is the help system. So for that, you just type H and you get all of this stuff. But it does constitute kind of a tutorial if you wanted to get into more depth about how to use Revuu. There's a whole separate section here, number 20, how to use the repotask system. So like 5 different questions here answering things like what is a repotask and how to set up a repo for a repotask if you didn't get it earlier. So you might ask yourself, can Revuu actually handle like C, for example, which compiles files? Well, actually it can. Revuu creates the compiled version and then runs it in 2 separate commands. So behind the scenes, it works a little bit different. So like, yep, write a program to print the value of EOF. Yep, there it is. It is very simple. In closing, let me tell you something about basically my intentions with Revuu and my own Revuu situation. So I am making this basically for myself. I'm solving my own problem, and I used to use this software called SuperMemo, but it didn't actually involve practical reviews of programming tasks, actually doing the tasks. Revuu does, and in the 2 months since I've started making and using it, I feel so much more confident as a programmer. Yeah, I'm actually very pleased with how it's going, so much so that I've now have 149 tasks. My next big feature is going to be to add support for teardown files. So things that need to be done after a task is run. So if you need to like reset the database or whatever after a task is done, then I'm gonna add some code for that. And it's possible I will actually make an attempt at some sort of database management, or at least making database management a little bit easier. I'm probably going to make some special support for SQL because I'm learning SQL myself. If anyone has any special requests for languages they are learning, then by all means go ahead and ask, and I will be delighted to figure it out and do it for you. So not only am I using it to learn, but the process of creating it is a great learning experience for me. So right now we support all of these languages, as you can see, and but I haven't actually tested some of these in much depth. My son uses Java and has made a number of Java and Rust tasks. So it seems to work all right for him on those. I haven't tested C++ and Python much. So if there's any special requirements that you run into, then just let me know. Um, and generally, if you have any special requests, then I would appreciate that. Any new design suggestions or whatever. I haven't had much feedback from actual users, so I actually would appreciate it a lot, and I'll like aim to please. The great thing about repotasks is that after each time you do a task, it resets the branch that you were working with. So it looks the same whenever you open up a repotask file, it looks the same as it did the last time you started it. And there has never been, to my knowledge, a way to repeatedly drill really complex contextual programming problems of the sort that you see in Rails and other platforms. So I hope you use it. I hope you clone it and give me some feedback. Maybe even make a pull request or two. That'd be awesome. All right. Thank you very much.